Mudmen. I'm here in the heart of Soho to meet author and historian Hallie Rubenhold. She's the perfect woman to help me out with a bit of Georgian how's your father. So, Hallie, we're standing here in Mead Street in the heart of Soho. Very civilised now. What would it have been like back in the mid-18th century, in the 1700s?
Well, actually, surprisingly, it would have been very civilised then as well. This would have been a pretty standard middle-class area filled with tradesmen and artisans and prostitutes who would have lived cheek by jowl with them. These women lived everywhere. Everywhere there was wealth, everywhere there were ordinary people with ordinary houses that they could rent rooms from. They were living there as well.
So how big was the sex trade then?
Well, it's really hard to get a round figure on that because, of course, there were no accurate censuses like we have today. For example, out of a population of 675,000, anywhere from about 15,000 to as high as about 62,500.
10% almost of the population was a prostitute here?
Yes.
That's a party town.
Yes. Well, it depends if you're a man or a woman.
That's like Vegas.
Yeah, but, you know, it wasn't such a great time for the women.
Yeah. And what kind of people were visiting these girls? I mean, there's so many there.
Everybody in society, men of all ranks and descriptions, were visiting prostitutes. Everybody from members of the royal family to politicians, members of the judiciary, peers, down to apprentices, tradesmen, sailors were visiting prostitutes.
And was this allowed? Was it tolerated? Or was it a bit of a sort of wink, wink, off you go, mate kind of scene?
Well, not only was it tolerated by society, I mean, the wealthy element of society practically underwrote certainly the upper echelons of prostitution.
For the discerning Georgian punter, there was only one man in London to speak to, the self-styled pimp general of all England, Mr. Jack Harris. Time for me and Hallie to go inside so she can give me the lowdown on this nefarious Mr. Fix-It. So who was Jack Harris?
Jack Harris was called the Pimp General of all England.
Okay.
He was the head waiter at the Shakespeare's Head pub in Covent Garden, which meant that he was also a pimp. So when people ordered their drinks, they also ordered women to go with their drinks.
Okay.
And what certainly made Jack Harris stand out above all other pimps in London was the fact that he carried a pimp's list, or a ledger of all the names of all the available women in Covent Garden and the surrounding areas. And his list ran to, we think, about 400 or so names.
So 400 ladies in his stable?
That's right.
And that's a hell of a stable. He must have earned millions.
Yes, well, there is a document that states that he earned as much as the Lord Treasurer. Harris's
infamy reached a peak when a down-and-out playwright decided to publish his private list, and in doing so, he created an 18th century bestseller that ran for 38 years. The list contained such salacious offerings as Nellie Anderson of Dean Street, a squat, swarthy, round-faced wench from the other side of the Tweed, famed for her swearing, drinking and talking bawdy. So the entries we see on Jack Harris's list, now they seem almost humorous and quite quaint, but this was presumably then as now again a dark business, this one.
Well, they're quite amazing because they are short biographies of these women and their lives. And their lives have otherwise been completely lost to us. I mean, they're the nameless, faceless people of history, the ordinary people, the wallpaper to London life. And we actually have names, addresses, ages, but also background. And so they listed that, but they also listed stuff like how many children she may have had, if she'd been married, if somebody abandoned her, where she's from.
So it really is it's an extraordinary sort of historical record of people otherwise history wouldn't have had any note of at all. In fact, the unmentionables of history.
Yes, absolutely. And not only that, with, you know, a lot of the, well, a large percentage of the women who went into prostitution were poor. And the poor were regarded as really no better than animals. And the women, poor women, were the lowest of the low.
After the break, Steve and I settle our differences Georgian style. Against the clock and the tides, me and mud god Steve Brooker have poked, prodded and scraped the foreshore at Limehouse, with our finds leading us to investigate all things Georgian. Steve went all handbags and glad rags, whilst I scratched beneath the surface of polite society with a sneaky peek of the infamous Harris list.